We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order and declare a quorum of 7 members present. We'll start with item C of the special, pardon me, I misspoke, the public hearing, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to accelerated instruction for the end of course exams 2016-17. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Dr. Yokin, members of the board. Texas Education Code does call for a public hearing to discuss results of accelerated instruction for end-of-course exams for students who failed to pass one or more sections of the high school end-of-course exams. We traditionally do this at the October meeting, and we have with us today Molly Perry, Executive Director of Special Services and Accountability, who's going to talk a little bit about our student performance and then accelerated instruction opportunities we gave to our students, and then subsequent student performance after that. With that, Mrs. Perry.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ely. Dr. Yokin, members of the board. This evening, we will do a brief overview of end-of-course exams, just to refresh everyone on those requirements, and then talk a little bit about the results of our accelerated instruction for our high school EOC courses over this last summer specifically. So as Dr. Ely mentioned, we are required to provide that accelerated instruction. We are required to provide that accelerated instruction anytime a student does not pass their high school EOC exam. Those are required assessments as part of graduation requirements. That accelerated instruction can be during the school day, and we do some of that, but it also can be after normal school hours or in the summer. And so we were here this evening to not only inform you all, but to meet that Texas Education Code requirement to hold a public hearing to talk about the results. So as a quick refresher, we do administer end-of-course exams in 5 content areas, or 4 content areas, 5 tests: Algebra 1, Biology, both English 1 and 2, as well as U.S. History. There are 3 opportunities throughout each school year and in the summer total to have students participate. Typically, the first administration is in the spring, and then there's a subsequent opportunity in the summer, and then again in December. Throughout the year, our high schools have supports in place built in time during the day, Success or Advocate, so that students can receive some of that targeted accelerated instruction. That's in addition to any before or after school tutorials. Of course, we have our online support with Success 24/7 and other EOC prep type materials that are available online. This summer, our program consisted of 10 days, 2-hour sessions each day before that retest, so a very focused preparation with small groups of students. It was at AMCHS for both or all high schools. We had participation from students at A&M Consolidated, as well as College Station High School, as well as College View High School, all there at AMCHS. This summer we did something a little different. We provided co-teach, meaning we had both a special education and a general education teacher in place for Algebra 1, Biology, and U.S. History. Mike McKeever was our summer administrator responsible for this accelerated instruction, and he reported that that was very successful. The teachers worked very well together, and we saw good results in those areas. English 1 and 2. Those participants were really grouped according to student need, and they were in small groups. Due to the quantity of students relative to those other contents, we were not able to offer co-teach this summer. So just overall, how many students participated? You can see the content areas or the tests across the top, total number of participants. And right away, you'll notice that English 1 was definitely our area of the most participants. That was also the area where we had the most need for students to retake. If you'll recall, the rigor on those English 1 and 2 exams is significantly higher than other content areas. So rather than looking just at passing scores, we also looked at what percentage of those students actually improved their score over the prior administration, and we saw really great results, especially in the area of biology and algebra. Then looking at the rate of students passing, as a reminder, for Algebra 1, we had a 92% pass rate for that first-time administration back in the spring, relative to the 87% at the state level. We had 14 students take the test after attending accelerated instruction this summer. So you'll see this middle column is going to be those students who did attend and their rate of passing, whereas the last column will be those students who did not attend but did retest. And so I think it's really interesting to compare that rate of passing for those who did participate versus those who did not. Then looking at biology, we had an initial pass rate of 93% for those first-time testers in the spring compared to the state rate of 88, and we saw a very significant difference in those students who participated in summer remediation versus those who did not on that particular exam. Then English 1, still we saw a greater percent meet the passing standard, however not nearly as broad a discrepancy in the rate of remediation passing rates compared to those who did not. Although you'll notice we did have a much higher passing rate, even at 81%, than that state rate of 70% for the first administration. English 2, we saw a similar gap with our students passing the first time at higher rates, 10% higher in fact than the state. But again, we didn't see as much effect for those students who attended versus those who did not taking this particular exam. Then U.S. history, we had a very strong pass rate at the beginning, so did the state. But we did see a good effect for those who attended compared to those who didn't, with 50 versus 36%. So overall impressions, we definitely know that those passing standards, and I've listed those there, the percent of the test that you have to get correct to pass is much higher in English 1 and 2 relative to U.S. history, algebra, and biology being the lowest at 35%. And so we would expect that more students would not meet the standard when the rate of passing is much higher. Also, those math tests and those English tests, those really spiral across all grade levels. It's much less about memorization of content compared to a biology or a U.S. history or even algebra to some extent. But it really is measuring that student's knowledge over many, many grade levels rather than that particular course. Then overall, we saw greater rates of passing for all the students in all of those different test areas than the students who did not attend. So we're very glad to report that, with the greatest effect size in biology and U.S. history. And finally, just as a side note, students do have to pass these exams. However, the individual graduation committee requirement by the state was extended to offer an opportunity for graduation for students who do not pass up to 2 exams under certain criteria of showing mastery in other ways. And so we were glad to see that, because we do know that there are some students who really have difficulties from a variety of reasons in passing exams, and they can really show us what they know in alternative ways. And so we'll continue to provide that opportunity as well. And with that,
Can you give us a little bit more detail on the English results, on whether or not the students had more trouble with the writing part or the reading part, those that did not pass?
It really varied, and so when the student groups were formed, there were groups that really focused more on the reading, and there were those that focused more on the writing aspects. Mr. McGeever, when we talked about the process of designing those groups, they really did look at the individual student scores and determine which group you would be with based on the greatest area of need. And so it really varied by student.
Okay, I appreciate that, but can you give a number or a percentage, which one? You know, what I'm looking for is the key words that I heard you say is that those are much more rigorous, and that potentially the difficulty with passing the test has to do with having to accumulate lots of skills up until that point. And so I'm trying to better understand where is it that we need to perhaps look at going forward, whether is it ensuring that the reading is stronger, or is it the writing?
So I would hesitate to answer your great question without double checking my notes, but I'm happy to do that.
If you wouldn't just put it in transmittal, I'd
Absolutely.
appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else?
Some of the differences between kind of the results of what we were doing compared to those who didn't. So it was a little bit concerning. It's like one kid passing or not. I'm wondering what are the other students do if they're not doing this? What do they do to prepare for their retest? Because other than biology, I mean, even U.S. history, it was 5 out of 10 versus 4 out of 11. It's one kid.
Right, it's very small numbers, so those percentages can be a little misleading if you're only looking at percentages. As far as the other students, they are all offered this opportunity. Some of them can't attend due to various reasons, whether that be work commitments or other family obligations. Some of them retest after not participating in remediation. Others take advantage of our online opportunities like Success 24/7 before they do retest.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important. It'd be interesting to see what the average test scores of those two groups were before they retook, right? I mean, if we have a student that failed one of those tests by one question or a percent, they might very well say to themselves, I really don't need to go through this whole thing over the summer. And the truth is they only need to improve on one question. So, right, I mean, we're going to compare two groups after scores. To me, if we're actually going to look at who improved, we need those before scores as well. So I need to know that those groups were equal and therefore instruction didn't make a difference, or these two groups were not the same. And in fact, we actually brought the students who attended that instruction up substantially farther. So it'd be interesting to see those numbers of before and after scores for instruction and not instruction. So
I agree. That would be a great analysis, and I'm happy to look at that further.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because otherwise I would start to question how much good are we really doing? I mean, if it's not something like that that explains the difference, then what is it, and how much are they really getting out of it if they can just go on their own and fend for themselves and do about as well as...
Well, one of the things that we can't assume is that I'm going to do as well if I'm not forced to do it in a structured manner versus, someone who does it on their own. We all have different aversions or need for structure, and so we can't assume that those students that did come to the support system would have been able to do that on our own. So I hear what you're saying, but I think, if we're going to delve into it, we have to realize everybody's need for structure is totally different. We can't assume that they're going to be the same.
No, I agree.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of factors, from those students that were absent during the first administration that then retook in the summer, to those students who are learning English for the first time, and those students that have significant disabilities that are also required to participate. So we could certainly look at it through a number of lenses.
I think I would like to see, and I think this goes to what you're saying too, is what was the improvement? Because you could have had somebody who didn't pass. I mean, when we're just looking at a number like this, they didn't pass. But if somebody improved and almost passed, I mean, to me, it worked. As it is, it kind of doesn't look like it did when you have just the number like that. But if I know this child was, on 100, got a 20 the first time, but got a, 55 or 60, well, in a summer's time, that's a lot of ground made up. And that, to me, speaks more volume than, well, they passed or didn't pass on the state test, because we all know how I feel about that. So I just want to see, improvement in their skill level, too, because I don't think it's fair for us to judge that number based on if they didn't get one question right, but at the end got 50 of them right, So I'd like to, I don't know if you have that, or
We
if
could
that...
certainly drill down and look at it more closely. Many of these students also were participating during the school year as well, and so it does get a little bit difficult to tease through some of those other types of variables, but we can definitely pull some additional information.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much for the report. With that, we'll adjourn.
Getting public comment.
Oh, sorry, public comment. Now we'll adjourn.